Welcome everyone. In this video we'll be looking at Demolishing Supposed Bible Contradiction 3 Part 1. Why does Jesus say that the Father is greater than He if the members of the Trinity are equal? John 14:28. You heard me say, I'm going away and I'm coming back to you. If you loved me, you would be glad that I'm going to the Father. For the Father is greater than I. Skeptics cite these verses to conclude that Jesus is lesser, in essence or nature, than God the Father. While Jesus promised the Holy Spirit to the disciples, He makes the statement that the Father is greater than Him. Jesus repeatedly says that He is doing the Father's will, implying that He is subservient to the Father. So how can Jesus be equal to God when by His own admission He is subservient to the will of God? The answer to this question lies within the nature of the incarnation. This statement refers to Jesus' state of humiliation that He took when He became a human being, not His basic nature or essence. When Jesus uttered, "The Father is greater than I," He was not comparing His nature with that of God the Father, but was comparing their positions, as Jesus was lesser in position when He came to earth in the form of a servant, known as His humiliation, as He humbled Himself to become a man and die on the cross. Paul also states in Philippians that Jesus has now been exalted, that Jesus is Lord. In Hebrews 2:9, Jesus' status during His incarnation is stated clearly, that He was temporarily made lower than the angels for a little while, when He became a man for the redemption of mankind. So when Jesus said, "The Father is greater than I," the Father was greater in the sense that He was in heaven in His glory, while Jesus was made a little lower than the angels, while on earth in human flesh. God the Father was greater in the sense that Jesus, as the God-man, or God in flesh, had humbled Himself when He became a man, and that the Father had the responsibility to make all the decisions, while Jesus was committed to absolute obedience. The doctrine of incarnation says that the second person of the Trinity took on human flesh. Therefore, for all intents and purposes, Jesus was fully human and made lower than the angels. However, being fully divine too, Jesus did not relinquish His divine nature when taking on human nature, as God cannot stop being God. So how can Jesus be fully divine yet fully human and made lower than the angels? When Jesus, the second person of the Trinity, took on human form, He made Himself nothing. This means Jesus voluntarily relinquished exercising His divine attributes and subjected Himself to the will of the Father while on earth. Also, subservience, that is, willingness to obey the Father unquestioningly or to be less important in role, does not equate to subservience in essence. All three members of the Trinity, that is Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, are essentially equal and divine in nature. However, in the grand plan of redemption, the three play certain roles, and these roles define authority and subservience. The Father commands the Son, and the Father and the Son command the Holy Spirit. Jesus, taking on human nature, making Himself subservient to the Father, does not deny His deity and does not diminish His essential equality with the Father. Therefore, the greatness of the Father in "the Father is greater than I," spoken of in John 14:28, relates to Jesus' role, not His essence. The overwhelming message of the Bible is that Jesus is God. Jesus earlier declares that He was and is God. The Bible clearly states that the religious leaders understood that Jesus claimed to be God. Jesus says, "Very truly I tell you, Before Abraham was born, I am, and is almost stoned for stating that he is I am. Jesus says he is I am, the same name God gives to Moses in Exodus 3:14. Jesus declares he is God when he says, I and the Father are one, and the Jews try to stone him for blasphemy because he was making himself to be God. The Jewish leaders clearly understood that Jesus claimed to be God. The next similar statement Jesus makes is in John 14:9, where Jesus says, anyone who has seen me has seen the Father. Jesus is God just as the Father is God, but Jesus was also a man on earth. Jesus made all of these declarations that he was and is God before he made the statement, the Father is greater than I, in John 14:28. Jesus is not contradicting himself, since when he was on earth in a human body, God the Father was greater, and as God in flesh, he was also a man during his time on earth. Jesus has called himself Son of Man throughout his ministry in the Gospels several times, and was also called Son of God. Scriptures tell us that Son of God denotes Jesus' divinity and Son of Man denotes his humanity. Jesus was modeling obedience for us to show us how to obey God and to submit to God, as he was committed to teach us also what was necessary for us to be righteous and Christ-like. God the Father was greater in authority, responsibility, position, but not in essence or nature, as Jesus was still deity. Therefore, in the relevant passage, Jesus was speaking in reference to his human nature, in which he is inferior to the Father. In his divine nature, he is equal to the Father. Jesus is both God and man together, not two separate persons, but one Christ. Otherwise, the Godhead would be a quaternity, not a trinity. Jesus is equal to the Father in terms of his divinity, being of the same substance as the Father. But the Father is greater because the Son accepted a body. Since the Son became a man, his nature is less than that of the Father. Thus, Jesus, by assuming an earthly body, is lesser than the Father and is taken back to the glory of the Father. So when Jesus says he and the Father are one, that is equal, and again says that the Father is greater than him, he is not contradicting himself, as he is simply showing us that he is God in flesh. So when Jesus says that the Father is greater than him, he is talking from the flesh, not from the divine second person of Trinity. Jesus may also be speaking of the Father is greater, in the sense that he always does what pleases his Father. Thus, as God, Jesus is equal to the Father, but as man, he is inferior to the Father. John 1:1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. John 1:14. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son, who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. Thanks for watching. God bless you all.